The first time she said it, my stomach tightened for reasons I couldn't explain. Don't worry. She laughed, like I'd asked something silly. He's just a friend. I remember nodding, pretending the word friend didn't echo in my head long after the room went quiet. I'm not a jealous man by nature. I've always believed trust is something you give until you're given a reason not to. That belief shaped our marriage. 8 years of choosing to believe her even when life got complicated. We met in our late 20s, both carrying old scars, both convinced we'd finally found someone safe. She used to call me her steady ground. I liked being that for her. The friend entered our lives so gradually I can't pinpoint the exact moment he became a presence. At first, he was just a name she mentioned in passing, someone from work who shared her sense of humor. Then he became a story over dinner, a quick text she answered while we watched TV. I noticed, but I didn't keep score. I told myself this was what trust looked like in practice. Still, something shifted. Not loudly, more like a draft in a closed room. She started guarding her phone the way people do when they're cold, subtle, instinctive. Screen angled away. Notifications silenced. When I asked how her day was, the answers came faster, flatter, as if she were reading from a summary instead of the full story. One night, while we brushed our teeth side by side, I asked about him. I tried to sound casual, like I was asking about the weather. She smiled at our reflections and said the line again, almost word for word. Don't worry. He's just a friend. Then she leaned over and kissed my cheek, minty and warm, and the conversation ended. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. I reminded myself of everything we'd survived together. Job losses, family illness, the quiet grief of plans that never worked out. People don't throw that away easily, I told myself. People don't lie after building a life brick by brick. But doubt has a way of seeping into the smallest cracks. I started noticing the timing of her messages, how they arrived late at night or during moments when we were supposed to be together. I noticed how she laughed at her phone, then locked it quickly, as if embarrassed to be caught smiling. When I asked what was funny, she'd shrug and say, just work stuff. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. Instead, I turned inward, questioning myself. Was I being distant? Had I grown boring? I replayed recent months like game footage, searching for the moment I dropped the ball. The scariest part wasn't suspecting her. It was suspecting myself. There were good days, too. Mornings when she made coffee just the way I liked it. Evenings when we talked about future trips, about maybe moving somewhere quieter. Those moments confused me more than the silence ever could. How could something feel both solid and fragile at the same time? The night before everything changed, we lay in bed scrolling on our phones, our shoulders barely touching. She turned away from me, facing the wall, her screen glowing faintly in the dark. I caught my own reflection in the black mirror of my phone, older than I remembered, eyes tired, searching. I thought about reaching for her, about asking one more time if everything was okay. Instead, I whispered goodnight and rolled onto my back, staring at the ceiling. I told myself I was imagining things. That trust meant letting go. Sleep didn't come easily. Somewhere beside me, her phone buzzed once, then went still. I didn't move. I didn't look. I just lay there, listening to my own heartbeat, unaware that I was standing at the edge of a truth that would split my life cleanly into before and after. The next morning unfolded like any other, which somehow made it worse. She hummed while getting dressed. I poured the coffee. We stood in the kitchen trading small talk, two people performing the muscle memory of a marriage that still looked intact from the outside. If someone had walked in, they would have seen normal, comfortable, safe. Inside me, something stayed awake. I started paying attention in a way I never had before, not suspicious, not frantic, just alert. Like a smoke alarm that won't stop blinking even though the room smells fine. I noticed how often she checked her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I noticed how her shoulders relaxed when a certain name appeared on the screen. Not excitement exactly. Familiarity. That's what cut. I told myself friendships evolve, that adults are allowed private worlds. But every reassurance felt borrowed, not earned. One evening, she came home late, later than she'd said. Her explanation was smooth, almost too smooth, like she'd practiced it on the drive over. I nodded and let it pass. Then she reached for me, wrapping her arms around my waist from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder. You okay? She asked softly. I said yes. I meant no. That night, after she fell asleep, I stared at the ceiling again, replaying old moments through a new filter. The way she'd once told me everything, even the boring parts. The way she used to hand me her phone without thinking. The way friend had become a word she repeated instead of a person she described. I hated myself for what came next. Not because it was wrong, but because it meant I was already losing something. Trust isn't just broken. Sometimes it's abandoned out of fear. A few days later, she left her phone on the kitchen counter when she rushed to the shower. It buzzed once. I didn't move. It buzzed again. Louder this time, like it wanted to be noticed. I stood there longer than I should have, hands gripping the edge of the counter, heart thudding with a rhythm that felt borrowed from someone else's body. I remember thinking, if I pick it up, there's no one knowing this. Some doors don't creak when they open. They just vanish. I didn't touch it. Not yet. Instead, I backed away like I'd almost stepped on something sharp. I went outside, breathed in cold air, tried to convince myself that restraint was strength. That love meant patience. That trust meant choosing not to look. But patience, I learned, can start to feel like self-betrayal when it's one-sided. Over the next week, the distance between us grew in inches, not miles. She laughed less with me, listened less. When I spoke, her eyes flicked to her phone like it was tugging her away on an invisible string. When I asked if everything was okay between us, she smiled sadly and said, "You're overthinking." That word, overthinking, landed heavier than I expected. It turned my quiet concern into a flaw, made me feel childish for noticing patterns. I apologized for asking. She thanked me for understanding. Something in me went quiet after that. The moment finally came on an ordinary Tuesday. No argument, no warning, just a misstep. She left for work early, distracted, forgetting her tablet on the nightstand. I noticed it hours later when I went to make the bed. The screen lit up when I touched it. No password. Synced messages. My chest tightened the way it does right before bad news you somehow already expect. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the screen without scrolling. My name was there. Our conversations. Normal. Safe. And just beneath them, another thread. His name. I told myself I'd only glance. Just enough to quiet the noise in my head. That's when I realized the noise wasn't the problem. It was the truth waiting underneath it. I don't remember deciding to open the messages. I remember the motion, my thumb dragging upward, slow, almost ceremonial, like my body knew something my mind wasn't ready to accept yet. The first few texts were harmless on the surface. Jokes, complaints about work. The kind of banter that could still live under the word friend if you squinted hard enough. I felt a brief, foolish relief. A tight smile tugged at my face, like I'd just dodged a bullet I'd imagined myself. Then the tone shifted. Not abruptly, intimately. The joke softened. The sentences grew longer. He started asking how she was really doing. She answered with honesty she hadn't shared with me in months. I could feel the center of gravity move as I read, like watching someone slowly lean away from you without ever stepping back. My chest ached, not with anger, but with something heavier, recognition. She told him she felt unseen sometimes. He told her she deserved more. She said she didn't know what she'd do without him lately. He replied, "You know I'm always here." That word, always, sat there like a promise that didn't belong to him. I stopped breathing somewhere around that point. I noticed because I had to remind myself to start again. Inhale. Exhale. Keep reading. Don't look away now. Not when the truth was finally speaking plainly. The messages grew more frequent. Good morning texts. Good night ones too. Little check-ins throughout the day that mirrored the way we used to talk when we were first falling in love. Inside jokes I wasn't part of. Emotional shorthand built brick by brick while I was standing right there, thinking we were still building something together. There were no explicit lines crossed yet. No photos. No declarations. And somehow that made it worse. This wasn't an accident. This was intention. Care. Practice. An emotional affair wears the mask of innocence right up until it doesn't. My hands started to shake, so I set the tablet down on the bed like it might burn me. I stood up, walked to the bathroom, splashed water on my face. I stared at my reflection, searching for the moment I became the man reading his wife's private messages, wondering how I'd ended up here. I didn't recognize myself, but I understood him. Back in the bedroom, the tablet still glowed softly, patient. I picked it up again. This time I scrolled further. Weeks back. Months. That's when I saw the message that changed everything. It was from him. Late. After midnight. "I wish I could hug you right now." Her response came minutes later. Me too. I think about that more than I should. The room went very still. There it was, not sex, not plans, not logistics, but longing. Unfiltered, undeniable. The kind that doesn't stay contained for long. The kind that rewrites boundaries quietly, then pretends it didn't. I sat down hard on the bed, tablet resting on my thighs, heart pounding so loud I was sure the neighbors could hear it. I felt foolish for every time I'd nodded, every time I'd accepted that line without question. Don't worry, he's just a friend. I realized then that the betrayal wasn't just what she'd done. It was how gently she'd done it. How calmly. How convincingly. I didn't cry. Not yet. I felt hollow, like something vital had been removed without anesthesia. I thought about confronting her immediately, about sending screenshots to myself, about storming into her workplace and demanding answers. I did none of that. Instead, I put the tablet back exactly where it had been. I made the bed. I went about my day like a man carrying a cracked glass of water, careful not to spill a drop. When she came home that evening, she kissed me hello and asked how my day was. I answered honestly, quiet. She smiled. Relief flickered across her face. She thought the storm had passed. I watched her move around the kitchen, confident, unaware that I now knew the shape of the secret she was carrying. I realized something then that scared me more than the messages themselves. I wasn't angry yet. I was preparing. The hardest part wasn't confronting her. It was living in the space between knowing and being known. Every smile she gave me after that felt borrowed. Every casual touch felt rehearsed. I watched her with a clarity that hurt. How easily she slipped between versions of herself, how natural the deception had become. I waited 3 days. Not to punish her. To steady myself. On the 4th night, I asked if we could talk. Nothing dramatic. Just those 4 words. Her shoulders tensed before she even turned around. That told me more than any message ever could. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place where we'd planned vacations and argued about paint colors. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just asked her one question. Are you in love with him? She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked down at her hands. Silence answered before she did. No, she said finally. But I care about him. There it was. The careful phrasing. The half step back from the edge. I nodded slowly, like I was absorbing a complex idea, even though my chest felt like it had collapsed inward. I told her what I'd seen. Not angrily. Precisely. The messages. The timing. The words she'd chosen when she thought I wasn't listening. Her face drained of color, not because she was caught, but because she'd underestimated how much I understood. She cried. Apologized. Said it hadn't meant to go this far. That she'd felt lonely. That she never planned to hurt me. I believed her on that last part. Intent doesn't always stop damage. What was he to you? I asked. She hesitated. Too long. I stood up then, not because I was done talking, but because I was done shrinking myself to fit inside someone else's confusion. I told her I needed space. Real space. Not silence. Not avoidance. Clarity. That night, I slept on the couch, staring at the dark ceiling, finally letting myself feel it all. The grief, the anger, the love that didn't turn off just because it was inconvenient. I realized something in that quiet. Betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers itself into your life until you barely recognize the sound of your own needs anymore. We separated 2 weeks later. Not explosively. Gently. Like people who still cared but no longer trusted the ground beneath their feet. She tried to reach out after. I answered when I could. Eventually, I stopped. I don't know what happened between them. Maybe it became something. Maybe it didn't. What I know is this. When someone tells you not to worry, listen to what your body is already saying. Trust matters. But so does self-respect. I didn't lose myself because she lied. I almost lost myself because I wanted peace more than truth. I won't make that mistake again. Some stories don't end with shouting or slammed doors. Some end with a quiet decision to choose yourself, even when it hurts. Especially then.